Saudi Arabia officially the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is a country in Western Asia. It spans the vast majority of the Arabian Peninsula, with a land area of approximately 2,150,000 square kilometers, 830,000 square miles. Saudi Arabia is the largest country in the Middle East, and the second largest country in the Arab world. It is bordered by Jordan and Iraq to the north, Kuwait to the northeast, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates to the east, Oman to the southeast and Yemen to the south. It is separated from Egypt and Israel in the northwest by the Gulf of Aqaba. Saudi Arabia is the only country with a coastline along both the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, and most of its terrain consists of arid desert, lowland, steppe and mountains. The territory that now constitutes Saudi Arabia was the site of several ancient cultures and civilizations. Prehistory of Saudi Arabia shows some of the earliest traces of human activity in the world. 14. The world's second largest religion, 15. Islam, emerged in modern-day Saudi Arabia. In the early 7th century, the Islamic prophet Muhammad united the population of Arabia and created a single Islamic religious polity. 16. Following his death in 632, his followers rapidly expanded the territory under Muslim rule beyond Arabia, conquering huge and unprecedented swathes of territory, from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to modern-day Pakistan in the east, in a matter of decades. Arab dynasties originating from modern-day Saudi Arabia founded the Rashidun, 632 to 661, Umayyad, 661 to 750, Abbasid, 750-1517, and Fatimid, 909-1171, caliphates, as well as numerous other dynasties in Asia, Africa and Europe. The area of modern-day Saudi Arabia formerly consisted of mainly 4 distinct historical regions: Hejaz, Najd and parts of eastern Arabia, Al-Asa, and southern Arabia, Asir. 22. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was founded in 1932 by King Abdulaziz, known as Ibn Saud in the west. He united the 4 regions into a single state through a series of conquests beginning in 1902 with the capture of Riyadh, the ancestral home of his family, the House of Saud. Saudi Arabia has since been a totalitarian absolute monarchy, effectively a hereditary dictatorship governed along Islamist lines. 23, 24, 25, 26. The ultra-conservative Wahhabi religious movement within Sunni Islam has been called the predominant feature of Saudi culture, with its global spread largely financed by the oil and gas trade. 23, 24. Saudi Arabia is sometimes called the land of the 2 holy mosques, in reference to Al-Masjid al-Haram, in Mecca, and Al-Masjid in Nabawi, in Medina, the 2 holiest places in Islam. The state's official language is Arabic. Petroleum was discovered on 3 March 1938 and followed up by several other finds in the eastern province. 27. Saudi Arabia has since become the world's second largest oil producer, behind the US, and the world's largest oil exporter, controlling the world's second largest oil reserves and the 6th largest gas reserves. 28. The kingdom is categorized as a World Bank high-income economy with a very high Human Development Index, 29, and is the only Arab country to be part of the G20 major economies. The state has attracted criticism for a variety of reasons, including its role in the Yemeni civil war, alleged sponsorship of Islamic terrorism, failure to adopt adequate measures against human trafficking, and its poor human rights record, which has been characterized by the excessive and often extrajudicial use of capital punishment, state-sponsored discrimination against religious minorities and atheists, and anti-Semitism, and its strict interpretation of Sharia law. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. However, Saudi Arabia recently introduced new reforms under the orders of Mohammed bin Salman, which includes improving women's rights in Saudi Arabia. 36, as well as newly enforced protections for migrant workers to prevent mistreatment. 37. However, many human rights organizations point out that Saudi Arabia must continue to introduce new reforms in order to be considered sufficient towards the improvement of its human rights record, and the world's largest arms importer from 2015 to 2019, receiving half of all the U.S. arms exports to the Middle East. 41, 42. According to the BICC, Saudi Arabia is the 28th most militarized country in the world and enjoys the region's best military equipment qualitatively, after Israel. 43. However, in recent years, there have been continuous calls for halting of arms sales to Saudi Arabia, mainly due to alleged war crimes in Yemen. 44. And especially following the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. 45, 46. Saudi Arabia is considered both a regional and middle power. 47, 48. The Saudi economy is the largest in the Middle East and 19th largest in the world. 11. Saudi Arabia also has one of the world's youngest populations, with approximately 50% of its population of 34.2 million being under 25 years old. 49. In addition to being a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Saudi Arabia is an active and founding member of the, following the amalgamation of the Kingdom of Hejaz and Najd. The new state was named Al-Mamlaka al-Arabiya as Saudiya, a transliteration of in Arabic, by royal decree on 23 September 1932 by its founder, Abdulaziz bin Saud, although this is normally translated as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in English. 50. It literally means the Saudi Arab Kingdom. 51. Or, the Arab Saudi Kingdom. 52. The word Saudi is derived from the element is Saudiya in the Arabic name of the country, which is a type of adjective known as a nisba, formed from the dynastic name of the Saudi royal family, the Al-Saud, Arabic. Its inclusion expresses the view that the country is the personal possession of the royal family. 53, 54. Al-Saud is an Arabic name formed by adding the word al, meaning family of, or house of. 55, to the personal name of an ancestor. In the case of the Al-Saud, this is Saad ibn Muhammad ibn Mukharan, the father of the dynasty's 18th century founder, Muhammad bin Saud. History main article, History of Saudi Arabia. See also, Pre-Islamic Arabia. Prehistory anthropomorphic stela, 4th millennium BC, sandstone, 57 by 27 centimeters, from El Markir Kariat Al-Kafa, National Museum, Riyadh. There is evidence that human habitation in the Arabian Peninsula dates back to about 125,000 years ago. 57. A 2011 study found that the first modern humans to spread east across Asia left Africa about 75,000 years ago across the Bab el-Mandeb connecting the Horn of Africa and Arabia. 58. The Arabian Peninsula is regarded as a central figure in the understanding of Harmonian evolution and dispersals. Arabia underwent an extreme environmental fluctuation in the Quaternary that led to profound evolutionary and demographic changes. Arabia has a rich Lower Paleolithic record, and the quantity of Oldowan-like sites in the region indicate a significant role that Arabia had played in the early Harmonian colonization of Eurasia. 59. In the Neolithic period, prominent cultures such as Al-Magar, whose center lay in modern-day southwestern Najd, flourished. Al-Magar could be considered as a Neolithic revolution in human knowledge and handicraft skills. 60. The culture is characterized as being one of the world's first to involve the widespread domestication of animals, particularly the horse, during the Neolithic period. 61. Aside from horses, animals such as sheep, goats, dogs, in particular of the Saluki breed, ostriches, falcons and fish were discovered in the form of stone statues and rock engravings. Al-Magar statues were made from local stone, and it seems that the statues were fixed in a central building that might have had a significant role on the social and religious life of the inhabitants. In November 2017, hunting scenes showing images of most likely domesticated dogs, resembling the Canaan dog, wearing leashes were discovered in Shuwaymas, a hilly region of northwestern Saudi Arabia. These rock engravings date back more than 8,000 years, making them the earliest depictions of dogs in the world. 62. At the end of the 4th millennium BC, Arabia entered the Bronze Age after witnessing drastic transformations. Metals were widely used, and the period was characterized by its 2 meters high burials, which were simultaneously followed by the existence of numerous temples that included many freestanding sculptures originally painted with red colors. 63. In May 2021, archaeologists announced that a 350,000-year-old Acheulean site named in Nasim in the Hale region could be the oldest human habitation site in northern Saudi Arabia. The site was first discovered in 2015 using remote sensing and paleohydrological modeling. It contains Paleolake deposits related with Middle Pleistocene materials. 354 artifacts, hand axes and stone tools, flakes discovered by researchers provided information about tool-making traditions of the earliest living man inhabited Southwest Asia. Besides, Paleolithic artifacts are similar to material remains uncovered at the Acheulean sites in the Nephid Desert. Pre-Islamic The Worshipping Servant statue, 2500 BC, above 1 meter in height, is much taller than any possible Mesopotamian or Harappan models. Photo courtesy of the National Museum of Korea. 68. The earliest sedentary culture in Saudi Arabia dates back to the Ubaid period, upon discovering various pottery sherds at Dosaria. Initial analysis of the discovery concluded that the eastern province of Saudi Arabia was the homeland of the earliest settlers of Mesopotamia, and by extension, the likely origin of the Sumerians. However, experts such as Joan Oates had the opportunity to see the Ubaid period sherds in eastern Arabia and consequently conclude that the sherds date to the last 2 phases of the Ubaid period, period 3 and 4, while a handful of examples could be classified roughly as either Ubaid 3 or Ubaid 2. Thus the idea that colonists from Saudi Arabia had emigrated to southern Mesopotamia and founded the region's first sedentary culture was abandoned. 69. Climatic change and the onset of aridity may have brought about the end of this phase of settlement, as little archaeological evidence exists from the succeeding millennium. 70. The settlement of the region picks up again in the period of Dilmun in the early 3rd millennium. Known records from Uruk refer to a place called Dilmun, associated on several occasions with copper, and in later period it was a source of imported woods in southern Mesopotamia. A number of scholars have suggested that Dilmun originally designated the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, notably linked with the major Dilmunite settlements of Nusi and Rama in the interior and Taraut on the coast. It is likely that Taraut Island was the main port and the capital of Dilmun. 68. Mesopotamian inscribed clay tablets suggests that in the early period of Dilmun, a form of hierarchical organized political structure existed. In 1966 an earthwork in Taraut exposed an ancient burial field that yielded a large Impressive statue dating to the Dilmunite period, mid-3rd millennium BC. The statue was locally made under the strong Mesopotamian influence on the artistic principle of Dilmun. 68, by 2200 BC. The center of Dilmun shifted for unknown reasons from Taraut and the Saudi Arabian mainland to the island of Bahrain, and a highly developed settlement emerged there, where a laborious temple complex and thousands of burial mounds dating to this period were discovered. 68, Qasr al-Farad. The largest of the 131 rock-cut monumental tombs built from the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD, with their elaborately ornamented facades. At the extensive ancient Nabatean archaeological site of Hegra located in the area of Al-Ula within Al-Madina region in the Hejaz. A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2008. By the Late Bronze Age. A historically recorded people and land, Midian and the Midianites, in the northwestern portion of Saudi Arabia are well documented in the Bible. Centered in Tabuk. It stretched from Wadi Arabah in the north to the area of Al-Wejh in the south. 71. The capital of Midian was Korea. 72. It consists of a large fortified citadel encompassing 35 hectares and below. It lies a walled settlement of 15 hectares. The city hosted as many as 10 to 12,000 inhabitants. 73. The Midianites were depicted in two major events in the Bible that recount Israel's two wars. Copper, and in later period it was a source of imported woods in southern Mesopotamia. A number of scholars have suggested that Dilmun originally designated the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. Notably linked with the major Dilmunite settlements of Nusi and Rama in the interior and Taraut on the coast. It is likely that Taraut Island was the main port and the capital of Dilmun. 68. Mesopotamian inscribed clay tablets suggests that, in the early period of Dilmun, a form of hierarchical organized political structure existed. In 1966 an earthwork in Taraut exposed an ancient burial field that yielded a large, impressive statue dating to the Dilmunite period, mid-3rd millennium BC. The statue was locally made under the strong Mesopotamian influence on the artistic principle of Dilmun. 68, by 2200 BC. The center of Dilmun shifted for unknown reasons from Taraut and the Saudi Arabian mainland to the island of Bahrain, and a highly developed settlement emerged there, where a laborious temple complex and thousands of burial mounds dating to this period were discovered. By the Late Bronze Age, a historically recorded people and land, Midian and the Midianites, in the northwestern portion of Saudi Arabia are well documented in the Bible. Centered in Tabuk. It stretched from Wadi Arabah in the north to the area of Al-Wejh in the south. 71. The capital of Midian was Korea. 72. It consists of a large fortified citadel encompassing 35 hectares and below. It lies a walled settlement of 15 hectares. The city hosted as many as 10 to 12,000 inhabitants. 73. The Midianites were depicted in two major events in the Bible that recount Israel's two wars with Midian. Somewhere in the early 11th century BC. Politically, the Midianites were described as having a decentralized structure headed by 5 kings, Evi, Rechem, Sur, Hur, and Reba. The names appears to be toponyms of important Midianite settlements. 74. It is common to view that Midian designated a confederation of tribes. The sedentary element settled in the Hejaz while its nomadic affiliates pastured and sometimes pillaged as far away land as Palestine. 75. The nomadic Midianites were one of the earliest exploiters of the domestication of camels that enabled them to navigate through the harsh terrains of the region. 75. Colossal statue from Al-Ula in the Hejaz, 6th–4th century BC. It followed the standardized artistic sculpting of the Lihyanite kingdom. The original statue was painted with white at the end of the 7th century BC. An emerging kingdom appeared in the historical theatre of northwestern Arabia. It started as a sheikhdom of Dedan, which developed into the kingdom of Lihyan tribe. 76. The earliest attestation of state regality, king of Lihyan, was in the mid-6th century BC. 77. The second stage of the kingdom saw the transformation of Dedan from a mere city-state of which only influence they exerted was inside their city walls, to a kingdom that encompasses much wider domain that marked the pinnacle of Lihyan civilization. 76. The third state occurred during the early 3rd century BC with bursting economic activity between the south and north that made Lihyan acquire large influence suitable to its strategic position. Was a powerful and highly organized ancient Arabian kingdom that played a vital cultural and economic role in the northwestern region of the Arabian Peninsula. 79. The Lihyanites ruled over a large domain from Yathrib in the south and parts of the Levant in the north. 80. In antiquity, Gulf of Aqaba used to be called Gulf of Lihyan, a testimony to the extensive influence that Lihyan acquired. 81. The Lihyanites fell into the hands of the Nabateans around 65 BC upon their seizure of Hegra, then marching to Tama and to their capital Dedan in 9 BC. The Nabateans ruled large portions of North Arabia until their domain was annexed by the Roman Empire. Shortly before the advent of Islam, apart from urban trading settlements, such as Mecca and Medina, much of what was to become Saudi Arabia was populated by nomadic pastoral tribal societies. 84. The Islamic prophet Muhammad was born in Mecca in about 571 CE. In the early 7th century, Muhammad united the various tribes of the peninsula and created a single Islamic religious polity. 16. Following his death in 632, his followers rapidly expanded the territory under Muslim rule beyond Arabia, conquering huge and unprecedented swathes of territory, from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to modern-day Pakistan in the east, in a matter of decades. Arabia soon became a more politically peripheral region of the Muslim world as the focus shifted to the vast and newly conquered lands. 16. Arabs originating from modern-day Saudi Arabia. The Hejaz in particular, founded the Rashidun, 632–661, Umayyad, 661–750. Abbasid, 750–1517, and the Fatimid, 909–1171, caliphates, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, from the 10th century to the early 20th century. Mecca and Medina were under the control of a local Arab ruler known as the Sharif of Mecca. But at most times the Sharif owed allegiance to the ruler of one of the major Islamic empires based in Baghdad, Cairo or Istanbul. Most of the remainder of what became Saudi Arabia reverted to traditional tribal rule. For much of the 10th century, the Ismaili Shiite Qarmatians were the most powerful force in the Persian Gulf. In 930, the Qarmatians pillaged Mecca, outraging the Muslim world, particularly with their theft of the Black Stone. 87. In 1077 to 1078, an Arab sheikh named Abdullah bin Ali al-Ayuni defeated the Qarmatians in Bahrain and al-Hassa with the help of the Great Seljuk Empire and founded the Ayunid dynasty. 88–89, the Ayunid Emirate later underwent expansion with its territory stretching from Najd to the Syrian desert. 90. They were overthrown by the Usfurids in 1253. 91. Ufshurid rule was weakened after Persian rulers of Hormuz captured Bahrain and Qatif in 1320. 92. The vassals of Hormuz. The Shia Jawanid dynasty came to rule eastern Arabia in the 14th century. 93. 94. The Jabrids took control of the region after overthrowing the Jawanids in the 15th century and clashed with Hormuz for more than 2 decades over the region for its economic revenues, until finally agreeing to pay tribute in 1507. 93. Al-Muntafiq tribe later took over the region and came under Ottoman suzerainty. The Bani Khalid tribe later revolted against them in the 17th century and took control. 95. Their rule extended from Iraq to Oman at its height and they too came under Ottoman suzerainty. 96. 97. Ottoman Hejaz. The 16th century, the Ottomans added the Red Sea and Persian Gulf Coast, the Hejaz, Asir and Al-Asa, to the empire and claimed suzerainty over the interior. One reason was to thwart Portuguese attempts to attack the Red Sea, hence the Hejaz, and the Indian Ocean. 98. Ottoman degree of control over these lands varied over the next 4 centuries with the fluctuating strength or weakness of the empire's central authority. 99. 100. These changes contributed to later uncertainties, such as the dispute with Transjordan over the inclusion of the Sanyak of Man, including the cities of Man and Aqaba. Foundation of the Saud dynasty. See also unification of Saudi Arabia, Atlas map of Arabia and the wider region in 1883, the emergence of what was to become the Saudi royal family, known as the Al Saud, began in Najd in Central Arabia in 1744, when Muhammad bin Saud, founder of the dynasty, joined forces with the religious leader Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, 101, founder of the Wahhabi movement, a strict puritanical form of Sunni Islam. 102. This alliance formed in the 18th century provided the ideological impetus to Saudi expansion and remains the basis of Saudi Arabian dynastic rule. Today. 103. The first Saudi state, established in 1744 in the area around Riyadh, rapidly expanded and briefly controlled most of the present-day territory of Saudi Arabia. 104. Sacking Karbala in 1802 and capturing Mecca in 1803, but was destroyed by 1818 by the Ottoman Viceroy of Egypt, Muhammad Ali Pasha. 105. A much smaller second Saudi state, located mainly in Najd, was established in 1824. Throughout the rest of the 19th century, the Al Saud contested control of the interior of what was to become Saudi Arabia with another Arabian ruling family, the Al Rashid, who ruled the Emirate of Jabal Shammah. By 1891, the Al Rashid were victorious and the Al Saud were driven into exile in Kuwait. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Ottoman Empire continued to control or have a suzerainty over most of the peninsula. Subject to this suzerainty, Arabia was ruled by a patchwork of tribal rulers, 106, 107, with the Sharif of Mecca having pre-eminence and ruling the Hejaz. 108, in 1902, Abdul Rahman's son, Abdul Aziz, later to be known as Ibn Saud, recaptured control of Riyadh, bringing the Al Saud back to Najd, creating the third Saudi state. 85. Ibn Saud gained the support of the Ikhwan, a tribal army inspired by Wahhabism and led by Faisal al-Dawrish, and which had grown quickly after its foundation in 1912. 109. With the aid of the Ikhwan, Ibn Sa'd captured Al-Asa from the Ottomans in 1913. In 1916, with the encouragement and support of Britain, which was fighting the Ottomans in World War I, the Sharif of Mecca, Hussein bin Ali, led a pan-Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire to create a united Arab state. 110. Although the Arab Revolt of 1916 to 1918 failed in its objective, the Allied victory in World War I resulted in the end of Ottoman suzerainty and control in Arabia, and Hussein bin Ali became king of Hejaz. 111. Ibn Sa'd avoided involvement in the Arab Revolt, and instead continued his struggle with the Al-Rashid. Following the latter's final defeat, he took the title Sultan of Najd in 1921. With the help of the Ikhwan, the Kingdom of Hejaz was conquered in 1924–25, and on 10 January 1926, Ibn Sa'd declared himself King of Hejaz. 112. A year later, he added the title of King of Najd. For the next 5 years, he administered the two parts of his dual kingdom as separate units. As the Ikhwan leadership's objective switched to expansion of the Wahhabist realm into the British protectorates of Transjordan, Iraq and Kuwait, and began raiding those territories. This met with Ibn Sa'd's opposition, as he recognized the danger of a direct conflict with the British. At the same time, the Ikhwan became disenchanted with Ibn Sa'd's domestic policies, which appeared to favor modernization and the increase in the number of non-Muslim foreigners in the country. As a result, they turned against Ibn Sa'd and, after a 2-year struggle, were defeated in 1929 at the Battle of Sabila, where their leaders were massacred. 113, on 23 September 1932. The two kingdoms of the Hejaz and Najd were united as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. 85, and that date is now a national holiday called Saudi National Day. Post-unification main article, Modern History of Saudi Arabia. Political map of Saudi Arabia. The new kingdom was reliant on limited agriculture and pilgrimage revenues. 115, in 1938. Vast reserves of oil were discovered in the Al-Asa region along the coast of the Persian Gulf, and full-scale development of the oil fields began in 1941 under the US-controlled Aramco, Arabian American Oil Company. Oil provided Saudi Arabia with economic prosperity and substantial political leverage internationally. 85. Cultural life rapidly developed, primarily in the Hejaz, which was the center for newspapers and radio. However, the large influx of foreign workers in Saudi Arabia in the oil industry increased the pre-existing propensity for xenophobia. Citation needed. At the same time, the government became increasingly wasteful and extravagant. By the 1950s, this had led to large governmental deficits and excessive foreign borrowing. In 1953, Sa'd of Saudi Arabia succeeded as the King of Saudi Arabia, on his father's death, until 1964 when he was deposed in favor of his half-brother Faisal of Saudi Arabia. After an intense rivalry, fueled by doubts in the royal family over Sa'd's competence, in 1972, Saudi Arabia gained a 20% control in Aramco, thereby decreasing U.S. control over Saudi oil. Citation needed. In 1973, Saudi Arabia led an oil boycott against the Western countries that supported Israel in the Yom Kippur War against Egypt and Syria. Oil prices quadrupled. 85. In 1975, Faisal was assassinated by his nephew, Prince Faisal bin Musaid, and was succeeded by his half-brother King Khalid. By 1976, Saudi Arabia had become the largest oil producer in the world. 117. Khalid's reign saw economic and social development progress at an extremely rapid rate, transforming the infrastructure and educational system of the country. 85. In foreign policy, close ties with the U.S. were developed. 116. In 1979. Two events occurred which greatly concerned the government, 118, and had a long-term influence on Saudi foreign and domestic policy. The first was the Iranian Islamic Revolution. It was feared that the country's Shiite minority in the eastern province, which is also the location of the oil fields, might rebel under the influence of their Iranian co-religionists. There were several anti-government uprisings in the region, such as the 1979 Qatif uprising. The second event was the Grand Mosque seizure in Mecca by Islamist extremists. The militants involved were in part angered by what they considered to be the corruption and un-Islamic nature of the Saudi government. 119. The government regained control of the mosque after 10 days, and those captured were executed. Part of the response of the royal family was to enforce the much stricter observance of traditional religious and social norms in the country, for example, the closure of cinemas, and to give the ulama a greater role in government. 120. Neither entirely succeeded as Islamism continued to grow in strength. In 1980, Saudi Arabia bought out the American interests in Aramco. 122. King Khalid died of a heart attack in June 1982. He was succeeded by his brother, King Fahd, who added the title, Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques, to his name in 1986 in response to considerable fundamentalist pressure to avoid the use of majesty in association with anything except God. Fahd continued to develop close relations with the United States and increased the purchase of American and British military equipment. 85. The vast wealth generated by oil revenues was beginning to have an even greater impact on Saudi society. It led to rapid technological, but not cultural, modernization, urbanization, mass public education, and the creation of new media. This and the presence of increasingly large numbers of foreign workers greatly affected traditional Saudi norms and values. Although there was a dramatic change in the social and economic life of the country, political power continued to be monopolized by the royal family. 85. Leading to discontent among many Saudis who began to look for wider participation in government. 123. In the 1980s, Saudi Arabia spent $25 billion in support of Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq War. 124. However, Saudi Arabia condemned the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990 and asked the U.S. to intervene. 85. King Fahd allowed American and coalition troops to be stationed in Saudi Arabia. He invited the Kuwaiti government and many of its citizens to stay in Saudi Arabia, but expelled citizens of Yemen and Jordan because of their government's support of Iraq. In 1991, Saudi Arabian forces were involved both in bombing raids on Iraq and in the land invasion that helped to liberate Kuwait. Saudi Arabia's relations with the West began to cause growing concern among some of the ulama and students of Sharia law and was one of the issues that led to an increase in Islamist terrorism in Saudi Arabia, as well as Islamist terrorist attacks in Western countries by Saudi nationals. Osama bin Laden was a Saudi citizen, until stripped of his citizenship in 1994, and was responsible for the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings in East Africa and the 2000 USS Cole bombing near the port of Aden, Yemen. 15 of the 19 terrorists involved in September 11 attacks in New York City, Washington, D.C. and near Shanksville, Pennsylvania were Saudi nationals. 125. Many Saudis who did not support the Islamist terrorists were nevertheless deeply unhappy with the government's policies. A source of hostility to the government. Although now extremely wealthy, Saudi Arabia's economy was near stagnant. High taxes and a growth in unemployment have contributed to discontent and have been reflected in a rise in civil unrest, and discontent with the royal family. In response, a number of limited reforms were initiated by King Fahd. In March 1992, he introduced the Basic Law, which emphasized the duties and responsibilities of a ruler. In December 1993, the Consultative Council was inaugurated. It is composed of a chairman and 60 members, all chosen by the king. The king's intent was to respond to dissent while making as few actual changes in the status quo as possible. Citation needed. Fahd made it clear that he did not have democracy in mind. A system based on elections is not consistent with our Islamic creed, which approves of government by consultation. In 1995, Fahd suffered a debilitating stroke, and the Crown Prince, Abdullah, assumed the role of de facto regent, taking on the day-to-day running of the country. However, his authority was hindered by conflict with Fahd's full brothers, known, with Fahd, as the Sudari 127. From the 1990s, signs of discontent continued and included, in 2003 and 2004. Since 2011, Saudi Arabia has been affected by its own Arab Spring protests. 131. In response, King Abdullah announced on the 22nd of February 2011 a series of benefits for citizens amounting to $36 billion, of which $10.7 billion was earmarked for housing. 132. No political reforms were announced as part of the package. Though some prisoners indicted for financial crimes were pardoned. 133. On the 18th of March the same year, King Abdullah announced a package of $93 billion, which included 500,000 new homes to a cost of $67 billion. In addition to creating 60,000 new security jobs. 134. 135. Although male-only municipal elections were held on 29 September 2011, 136. 137, Abdullah allowed women to vote and be elected in the 2015 municipal elections, and also to be nominated to the Shura Council. 138. Since 2001, Saudi Arabia has engaged in widespread internet censorship. Most online censorship generally falls into two categories. One based on censoring immoral, mostly pornographic and LGBT-supportive websites along with websites promoting any religious ideology other than Sunni Islam, and one based on a blacklist run by Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Media, which primarily censors websites critical of the Saudi regime or associated with parties that are opposed to or opposed by Saudi Arabia. 139, 140, 141. Saudi Arabia is an absolute monarchy. 142. However, according to the Basic Law of Saudi Arabia adopted by royal decree in 1992, the king must comply with Sharia, Islamic law, and the Quran. While the Quran and the Sunnah, the traditions of Muhammad, are declared to be the country's constitution. 143. No political parties or national elections are permitted. 142. Critics regard it as a totalitarian dictatorship. 144. The Economist rated the Saudi government as the fifth most authoritarian government out of 167 rated in its 2012 Democracy Index 26, and Freedom House gave it its lowest, not free, rating. 7.0. 1 equals best, 7 equals worst, for 2019. 145. In the absence of national elections and political parties. 142. Politics in Saudi Arabia takes place in two distinct arenas, within the royal family, the Al Saud, and between the royal family and the rest of Saudi society. 146. Outside of the Al Saud, participation in the political process is limited to a relatively small segment of the population and takes the form of the royal family consulting with the ulama, tribal sheikhs, and members of important commercial families on major decisions. 147. This process is not reported by custom. All males of full age have a right to petition the king directly through the traditional tribal meeting known as the Majlis. 149. In many ways the approach to government differs little from the traditional system of tribal rule. Tribal identity remains strong and, outside of the royal family, political influence is frequently determined by tribal affiliation, with tribal sheikhs maintaining a considerable degree of influence over local and national events. 147. As mentioned earlier, in recent years there have been limited steps to widen political participation, such as the establishment of the Consultative Council in the early 1990s and the National Dialogue Forum in 2003. 150. The rule of the Al Saud faces political opposition from four sources: Sunni Islamist activism, liberal critics, the Shiite minority, particularly in the eastern province, and long-standing tribal and regionalist particularistic opponents, for example in the Hejaz. 151. Of these, the minority activists have been the most prominent threat to the government and have in recent years perpetrated a number of violent incidents in the country. 128. However, open protest against the government, even if peaceful, is not to House of Saud King Fahd with U.S. President Ronald Reagan and future U.S. President Donald Trump in 1985. The US and Saudi Arabia supplied money and arms to the anti-Soviet Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan. The king combines legislative, executive, and judicial functions. 147, and royal decrees form the basis of the country's legislation. 152, the king is also the prime minister and presides over the Council of Ministers of Saudi Arabia and Consultative Assembly of Saudi Arabia. The royal family dominates the political system. The family's vast numbers allow it to control most of the kingdom's important posts and to have an involvement and presence at all levels of government. 153. The number of princes is estimated to be at least 7,000. With most power and influence being wielded by the 200 or so male descendants of Ibn Saud. 154. The key ministries are generally reserved for the royal family. 142. As are the 13 regional governorships. Long-term political and government appointments have resulted in the creation of power fiefdoms, for senior princes. 156, such as those of King Abdullah, who had been commander of the National Guard since 1963, until 2010, when he appointed his son to replace him. 157, former Crown Prince Sultan Minister of Defense and Aviation from 1962 to his death in 2011, former Crown Prince Prince Naif, who was the Minister of Interior from 1975 to his death in 2012. Prince Saad, who had been Minister of Foreign Affairs since 1975, 158, and current King Salman, who was Minister of Defense and Aviation before he was Crown Prince and Governor of the Riyadh Province from 1962 to 2011, 159. The current Minister of Defense is Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the son of King Salman and Crown Prince. The royal family is politically divided by factions based on clan loyalties, personal ambitions and ideological differences. 146. The most powerful clan faction is known as the Sudari 7, comprising the late King Fahd and his full brothers and their descendants. 161. Ideological divisions include issues over the speed and direction of reform. 162. And whether the role of the ulama should be increased or reduced. There were divisions within the family over who should succeed to the throne after the accession or earlier death of Prince Sultan. 161, 163, when Prince Sultan died before ascending to the throne on the 21st of October 2011. King Abdullah appointed Prince Naif as Crown Prince. 164. The following year Prince Naif also died before ascending to the throne. 165. As many as 500 princes, government ministers, and business people, including Prince Fahd bin Abdullah, were arrested by Saudi Arabian authorities as part of the 2017 Saudi Arabian purge. The Saudi government and the royal family have often, over many years, been accused of corruption. 166. In a country that is said to belong to the royal family and is 54. The lines between state assets and the personal wealth of senior princes are blurred. 154. The extent of corruption has been described as systemic. 167, and endemic. 168, and its existence was acknowledged. 169, and defended. 170, by Prince Bandar bin Sultan, a senior member of the royal family. 171, in an interview in 2001. 172. Although corruption allegations have often been limited to broad undocumented accusations, 173 specific allegations were made in 2007. When it was claimed that the British defense contractor BAE Systems had paid Prince Bandar $2 billion in bribes relating to the Al Yamamah arms deal. 174, 175, Prince Bandar denied their allegations. 176, investigations by both US and UK authorities resulted in 2010, in plea bargain agreements with the company, by which it paid $447 million in fines but did not admit to bribery. 177, Transparency International in its annual Corruption Perceptions Index for 2010 gave Saudi Arabia a score of 4.7, on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is highly corrupt, and 10 is highly clean. 178, Saudi Arabia has undergone a process of political and social reform, such as to increase public transparency and good governance. However, nepotism and patronage are widespread when doing business in the country. The enforcement of the anti-corruption laws is selective and public officials engage in corruption with impunity. A number of prominent Saudi Arabian princes, government ministers, and businesspeople, including Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, were arrested in Saudi Arabia in November 2017. 179. There has been mounting pressure to reform and modernize the royal family's rule, an agenda championed by King Abdullah both before and after his accession in 2005. The creation of the Consultative Council in the early 1990s did not satisfy demands for political participation, and, in 2003, an annual National Dialogue Forum was announced that would allow selected professionals and intellectuals to publicly debate current national issues, within certain prescribed parameters. In 2005, the first municipal elections were held. In 2007, the Allegiance Council was created to regulate the succession, 150, in 2009. The king made significant personnel changes to the government by appointing reformers to key positions and the first woman to a ministerial post, 180, however. These changes have been criticized as being too slow or merely cosmetic, 181. Saudi Arabia is almost unique in giving the ulama, the body of Islamic religious leaders and jurists, a direct role in government, 182, the preferred ulama are of the Salafi persuasion. The ulama have also been a key influence in major government decisions. For example, the imposition of the oil embargo in 1973 and the invitation to foreign troops to Saudi Arabia in 1990, 183, in addition. They have had a major role in the judicial and education systems, 184, and a monopoly of authority in the sphere of religious and social morals, 185, by the 1970s. As a result of oil wealth and the modernization of the country initiated by King Faisal, important changes to Saudi society were underway and the power of the ulama was in decline, 186, however. This changed following the seizure of the Grand Mosque in Mecca in 1979 by Islamist radicals. 187. The government's response to the crisis included strengthening the ulama's powers and increasing their financial support. 120. In particular, they were given greater control over the education system, 187, and allowed to enforce the stricter observance of Wahhabi rules of moral and social behavior, 120, after his accession to the throne in 2005. King Abdullah took steps to reduce the powers of the ulama, for instance transferring control over girls' education to the Ministry of The ulama have historically been led by the Al-Ash Sheikh, 189, the country's leading religious family. 185. The Al-Ash Sheikh are the descendants of Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, the 18th century founder of the Wahhabi form of Sunni Islam which is today dominant in Saudi Arabia. 190. The family is second in prestige only to the Al Saud, the royal family, 191, with whom they formed a mutual support pact, 192, and power-sharing arrangement nearly 300 years ago. 183. The pact, which persists to this day, 192, is based on the Al Saud maintaining the Al-Ash Sheikh's authority in religious matters and upholding and propagating Wahhabi doctrine. In return, the Al-Ash Sheikh support the Al Saud's political authority, 193, thereby using its religious moral authority to legitimize the royal family's rule. 194. Although the Al-Ash Sheikh's domination of the ulama has diminished in recent decades, 195, they still hold the most important religious posts and are closely linked to the Al Saud by a high degree of intermarriage. 185. Legal system. The primary source of law is the Islamic Sharia derived from the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah, the traditions of the Prophet. 152. Saudi Arabia is unique among modern Muslim states in that Sharia is not codified and there is no system of judicial precedent, giving judges the power to use independent legal reasoning to make a decision. Saudi judges tend to follow the principles of the Hanbali school of jurisprudence, or fiqh, found in pre-modern texts, 197, and noted for its literalist interpretation of the Quran and Hadith, 198. Because the judge is empowered to disregard previous judgments, either his own or of other judges, and may apply his personal interpretation of Sharia to any particular case. Divergent judgments arise even in apparently identical cases, 199, making predictability of legal interpretation difficult. 200. The Sharia court system constitutes the basic judiciary of Saudi Arabia, and its judges, qadi, and lawyers form part of the ulama. The country's Islamic scholars. Citation needed. Royal decrees are the other main source of law, but are referred to as regulations rather than laws because they are subordinate to the Sharia. 152. Royal decrees supplement Sharia in areas such as labor, commercial and corporate law. Additionally, traditional tribal law and custom remain significant. 201. Extra Sharia government tribunals usually handle disputes relating to specific royal decrees. 202. Final appeal from both Sharia courts and government tribunals is to the king, and all courts and tribunals follow Sharia rules of evidence and procedure. The Saudi system of justice has been criticized for its ultra-puritanical judges, who are often harsh in their sentencing, with beheading for the crime of witchcraft, but also sometimes overly lenient for cases of rape or wife beating, and slow. For example, leaving thousands of abandoned women unable to secure a divorce. 204, 205. The system has also been criticized for being arcane. 206, lacking in some of the safeguards of justice, and unable to deal with the modern world. 207. In 2007, King Abdullah issued royal decrees reforming the judiciary and creating a new court system. 199, and, in 2009, the king made a number of significant changes to the judiciary's personnel at the most senior level by bringing in a younger generation. 206. Dira Square, Central Riyadh. Known locally as Chop Chop Square, it is the location of public beheadings. 208. Capital and physical punishments imposed by Saudi courts, such as beheading, stoning to death, amputation, crucifixion and lashing, as well as the sheer number of executions, have been strongly criticized. 209. The death penalty can be imposed for a wide range of offenses including murder, rape, armed robbery, repeated drug use, apostasy, adultery, witchcraft and sorcery, and can be carried out by beheading with a sword, stoning or firing squad, followed by crucifixion. 210, 211, 212. The 345 reported executions between 2007 and 2010 were all carried out by public beheading. The last reported execution for sorcery took place in September 2014. 213. Studies have shown that Saudi Arabia has one of the lowest crime rates in the world, although there are differing views as to whether this is attributable to the legal system or other factors such as social structures. Although repeated theft can be punishable by amputation of the right hand, only one instance of judicial amputation was reported between 2007 and 2010. Homosexual acts are punishable by flogging or death. 210, 212, 215. In April 2020, Saudi Supreme Court issued a directive to eliminate the punishment of flogging from the Saudi court system, and it is to be replaced by imprisonment or fines. 216, 217. Atheism or calling into question the fundamentals of the Islamic religion on which this country is based, is considered a terrorist crime. 218. Lashings are a common form of punishment. 219. And are often imposed for offenses against religion and public morality such as drinking alcohol and neglect of prayer and fasting. Obligations. 210. Retaliatory punishments or cheeses are practiced. For instance, an eye can be surgically removed at the insistence of a victim who lost his own eye. 205. Families of someone unlawfully killed can choose between demanding the death penalty or granting clemency in return for a payment of diya, blood money, by the perpetrator. 220. Foreign relations. Saudi Arabia joined the UN in 1945, 50, 221, and is a founding member of the Arab League, Gulf Cooperation Council, Muslim World League, and the Organization of the Islamic Conference, now the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. 222. It plays a prominent role in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and in 2005 joined the World Trade Organization. 50. Saudi Arabia supports the intended formation of the Arab Customs Union in 2015 and an Arab Common Market. 223. By 2020. As announced at the 2009 Arab League Summit. 224. Since 1960, as a founding member of OPEC. Its oil pricing policy has been generally to stabilize the world oil market and try to moderate sharp price movements so as to not jeopardize the Western economies. 50. 225. In 1973, Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations imposed an oil embargo against the United States, United Kingdom, Japan and other Western nations which supported Israel in the Yom Kippur War of October 1973. 226. The embargo caused an oil crisis with many short and long-term effects on global politics and the global economy. 227. Between the mid-1970s and 2002, Saudi Arabia expended over $70 billion in overseas development aid. However, there is evidence that the vast majority was, in fact, spent on propagating and extending the influence of Wahhabism at the expense of other forms of Islam. 228. There has been an intense debate over whether Saudi aid and Wahhabism has fomented extremism in recipient countries. 229. The two main allegations are that, by its nature, Wahhabism encourages intolerance and promotes terrorism. 230. Counting only the non-Muslim majority countries, Saudi Arabia has paid for the construction of 1359 mosques, 210 Islamic centers, 202 colleges, and 2,000 schools. Saudi Arabia and the United States are strategic allies. 232, 233, and since President Barack Obama took office in 2009, the U.S. has sold $110 billion in arms to Saudi Arabia. 234, 235. However, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States became strained and have witnessed major decline during the last years of the Obama administration. 236, 237, 238. Although Obama had authorized U.S. forces to provide logistical and intelligence support to the Saudis in their military intervention in Yemen, establishing a joint coordination planning cell with the Saudi military that is helping manage the war. 239, 240, and CIA used Saudi bases for drone assassinations in Yemen. 241, 242, 243, 244. In the first decade of the 21st century, the Saudi Arabia paid approximately $100 million to American firms to lobby the U.S. government. 245. On 20 May 2017. President Donald Trump and King Salman signed a series of letters of intent for Saudi Arabia to purchase arms from the United States totaling $110 billion immediately, 246, and $350 billion over 10 years. In the Arab and Muslim worlds, Saudi Arabia is considered to be pro-Western and pro-American, 249, and it is certainly a long-term ally of the United States, 250. However, this, 251, and Saudi Arabia's role in the 1991 Persian Gulf War, particularly the stationing of U.S. troops on Saudi soil from 1991, prompted the development of a hostile Islamist response internally. 252. As a result, Saudi Arabia has, to some extent, distanced itself from the US and, for example, refused to support or to participate in the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. 147. China and Saudi Arabia are major allies, with relationship between the two countries growing significantly in recent decades. Majority of Saudi Arabians also expressed a favorable view of China. 253, 254, 255, 256, 257, 258. In February 2019, Crown Prince Mohammed defended China's Xinjiang re-education camps for Uyghur Muslims, 259, 260, saying, "China has the right to carry out anti-terrorism and de-extremization work for its national security." 261, 262. In July 2019, UN ambassadors of 37 countries, including Saudi Arabia, have signed a joint letter to the UNHRC defending China's treatment of Uyghurs and other Muslim minority groups in the Xinjiang region. 263. The consequences of the 2003 invasion and the Arab Spring led to increasing alarm within the Saudi monarchy over the rise of Iran's influence in the region. 264. These fears were reflected in comments of King Abdullah, 188, who privately urged the United States to attack Iran and cut off the head of the snake. 265. The tentative rapprochement between the US and Iran that began in secret in 2011, 266, was said to be feared by the Saudis. 267. And, during the run-up to the widely welcomed deal on Iran's nuclear program that capped the first stage of US-Iranian détente, Robert Jordan, who was U.S. ambassador to Riyadh from 2001 to 2003, said, Saudi's worst nightmare would be the Obama administration striking a grand bargain with Iran. 268. A trip to Saudi by U.S. President Barack Obama in 2014 included discussions of U.S.-Iran relations, though these failed to resolve Riyadh's concerns. 269. In order to protect the House of Khalifa, the monarchs of Bahrain, Saudi Arabia invaded Bahrain by sending military troops to quell the uprising of Bahraini people on 14 March 2011. 270. The Saudi government considered the two-month uprising as a security threat posed by the Shia who represent the majority of Bahrain population. 270. Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir with then British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, now Prime Minister, in London. 16 October 2016. On 25 March 2015, Saudi Arabia, spearheading a coalition of Sunni Muslim states, 271, started a military intervention in Yemen against the Shia Houthis and forces loyal to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, who was deposed in the 2011 Arab Spring uprisings. 272. At least 56,000 people have been killed in armed violence in Yemen between January 2016 and October 2018. 273. Saudi Arabia, together with Qatar and Turkey, openly supported the Army of Conquest. 274. An umbrella group of anti-government forces fighting in the Syrian civil war that reportedly included an al-Qaeda-linked al-Nusra Front and another Salafi coalition known as Ara al-Sham. 275. Saudi Arabia was also involved in the CIA-led Timber Sycamore covert operation to train and arm Syrian rebels. Number of incidents during the Hajj season, the deadliest, 277, of which killed at least 2,070 pilgrim, 278, in 2015 Mina stampede. Saudi Arabia has been accused of mismanagement and focusing on increasing money revenues while neglecting pilgrims' welfare. 279. In March 2015, Sweden scrapped an arms deal with Saudi Arabia, marking an end to a decade-old defense agreement with the kingdom. The decision came after Swedish Foreign Minister Margot Wallström was blocked by the Saudis while speaking about democracy and women's rights at the Arab League in Cairo. This also led to Saudi Arabia recalling its ambassador to Sweden. 280. Saudi Arabia has been seen as a moderating influence in the Arab-Israeli conflict, periodically putting forward a peace plan between Israel and the Palestinians and condemning Hezbollah. 281. Following the Arab Spring, Saudi Arabia offered asylum to deposed President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali of Tunisia and King Abdullah telephoned President Hosni Mubarak of Egypt, prior to his deposition, to offer his support. 282. In early 2014, relations with Qatar became strained over its support for the Muslim Brotherhood and Saudi Arabia's belief that Qatar was interfering in its affairs. In August 2014, both countries appeared to be exploring ways of ending the rift. 283. Saudi Arabia and its allies have criticized Qatar-based TV channel Al Jazeera and Qatar's relations with Iran. In 2017, Saudi Arabia imposed a land, naval and air blockade on Qatar. Saudi Arabia halted new trade and investment dealings with Canada and suspended diplomatic ties in a dramatic escalation of a dispute over the kingdom's arrest of women's rights activist Sama Badawi. On 6 August 2018, 286, tensions have escalated between Saudi Arabia and its allies after the disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi from the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Turkish officials are highly skeptical of Khashoggi being murdered inside the consulate. This has strained the already suffering Saudi Arabia-Turkey relations. As stated by Özgür Unluhisirsikli, director of the German Marshall Fund's Ankara office, Turkey is maintaining a very delicate balance in its relations with Saudi Arabia. The relations have the potential of evolving into a crisis at any moment. 287. The pressure on Saudi to reveal the insights about Khashoggi's disappearance from the US and other European countries has increased. Saudi-US relations took an ugly turn on 14 October 2018, when Trump promised severe punishment if the royal court was responsible for Khashoggi's death. The Saudi Foreign Ministry retaliated with an equal statement saying, "It will respond with greater action," indicating the kingdom's influential and vital role in the global economy. A joint statement was issued by Britain, France, and Germany, also demanding a credible investigation to establish the truth about what happened, and, if relevant, to identify those bearing responsibility for the disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi and ensure that they are held to account. The U.S. expects its Gulf allies involved in the coalition in Yemen to put in more efforts and address the rising concerns about the millions that have been pushed to the brink of famine. According to the United Nations, the Arabian Peninsula nation is home to the world's worst humanitarian crisis. 289, more than 50,000 children in Yemen died from starvation in 2017, 290. The famine in Yemen is the direct result of the Saudi-led intervention and blockade of the rebel-held area. 291, 292, in the wake of Jamal Khashoggi's murder in October 2018. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis called for a ceasefire in Yemen within 30 days, followed by UN-initiated peace talks. Pompeo has asked Saudi Arabia and the UAE to stop their airstrikes on populated areas in Yemen. Theresa May backed the U.S. call to end the coalition. President of the International Rescue Committee David Miliband called the U.S. announcement as the most significant breakthrough in the war in Yemen for 4 years. In September 2020, Showtime announced that it will premiere its original documentary, Kingdom of Silence, on the 2nd of October that year. The film was based on the 2018 murder of Jamal Khashoggi by Saudi authorities. Directed by filmmaker Rick Rowley, the documentary examines the relationship between the US and Saudi Arabia. As a backdrop to the murder of Khashoggi, along with the interactions between the Trump administration and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, 294, another documentary by Brian Fogel, The Dissident, which excavated a web of deceit behind the murder, was to be released on the same day that marked the second death anniversary of Khashoggi. 295, Jeremy Hunt, the UK Foreign Secretary, on his visit to Saudi Arabia and the UAE on 12 November 2018, is expected to raise the need for a ceasefire from all sides in the 4-year-long Yemen civil war. The U.S. called for a ceasefire within 30 days. 296, Andrew Smith, of Campaign Against Arms Trade, CAAT, said that Hunt and Boris Johnson played an utterly central and complicit role in arming and supporting the Saudi-led destruction of Yemen. 297, 298, in 2017, as part of its nuclear power program. Saudi Arabia planned to extract uranium domestically, taking a step towards self-sufficiency in producing nuclear fuel. On 24 August 2017, the kingdom signed a Memorandum of Understanding with China National Nuclear Corporation, CNNC, to explore and assess uranium-299, on 4 August 2020. A report claimed that Saudi Arabia has constructed a facility in the desert near Al-Ula for extracting uranium yellowcake from uranium ore with the help of China. The facility raised concerns among the U.S. and allied officials about Saudi nuclear energy plans and the country's option of developing nuclear weapon. 300, on 19 August 2020. Congressional Democrats asked the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to provide information about China's alleged role in building a uranium processing facility in Saudi Arabia. On 17 September 2020, The Guardian released an exclusive report revealing that Saudi Arabia was paving the way for domestic production of nuclear fuel. The confidential report obtained by the media house stated that the kingdom was assisted by Chinese geologists to produce over 90,000 tons of uranium from 3 major deposits in the center and northwest of Saudi, near the Neom megacity development. The disclosure raised concerns regarding Riyadh's aggressive interest in developing atomic weapons program. 302. Apart from China, the UN nuclear watchdog, International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, was also assisting Saudi's nuclear ambition. According to the Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki in March 2014, Saudi Arabia along with Qatar provided political, financial, and media support to terrorists against the Iraqi government. 304. Similarly, President of Syria Bashar al-Assad noted that the sources of the extreme ideology of the terrorist organization ISIS and other such Salafist extremist groups are the 5. Relations with the U.S. became strained following 9.